For glory! For Rome! Hello, my noble band of outlaws. Outlaw Samurai coming at you live with a video. Or would you prefer Dwarven Masterman? More dwarven comedy videos to come on at a later date once I make better skits for them. In any case, today is the long-awaited review of the Phantom Strike machete by SOG, which is a gladius machete. And there's a reason why I've been holding off on this review. I know it's been like, I did the unboxing video, I did supplementary video, I ragged on it because of the steel used in it. I did the cutting video, 20 videos-ish later, and now finally doing the review. Yeah, I hit a lazy spell and just did not feel like forming coherent thoughts long enough to form a video for like weeks. As you know, I have. As long-time viewers of this channel know, I have problems with chronic lazy and not wanting to do anything. But in any case, let's get past that, shall we? So, the SOG Phantom Strike Machete Gladius, or Gladius Machete, whichever you want to say. How did it perform? Well, if you can overlook the 440 stainless steel, or in this, 420 stainless steel, which, again, no, I'm not going to rant on it, but that's beside the point. Its performance was actually pretty damn good. It was a pretty good little cutter. It took a very, very nice sharpened edge, which I have completely forgotten which edge I sharpened and which edge I didn't sharpen, because of how long it's been since I cut with this. But in any case, so, I didn't really feel any kind of real significance between the two edges when I cut from my remembrance. It has a relatively thin blade, thick for a machete, or at least a on-market machete that's not high-end or from a high-end knife company. As you can see, about the thickness of 2/4. It's fairly rigid, so it doesn't bend easily. Which, you do want a certain amount of extra give because of how thin and wide a machete blade is. You want that extra flex so it doesn't snap, because there's not a lot of meat in the spine to support it. However, I don't see this as a detriment, considering that this style of machete is very much the same as the Roman gladius, which is mainly a stabbing and thrusting weapon that you would use in conjunction with your Sparta, or the shield that the Roman legionaries would use. They'd form the legionary formation, they'd have the spears out, and they would have the gladius pretty actually high up on their body, almost underneath their armpit, so they could just pull it out like this and get to stabby between the ribs. Shape-wise, it is the perfect silhouette of a classic gladius. And honestly, if you're looking for a kind of introductionary blade, and I say introductionary when I mean like introducing somebody to backyard cutting. I've said this before, but machetes are the perfect, easy, cheap, multiply available way of introducing someone to backyard cutting if they don't want to spend $50 to $150 on an entry-level Amazon katana made of 1045. Generally, these are made out of a form of spring steel. At least, generally, most machete blades that I'm aware of are made of 5160 spring steel, which is the same as the leaf springs on your trucks and cars. So they can take a good beating. And 5160 spring steel is my go-to spring steel if I'm going to be buying a blade that I know I'm going to be doing some kind of abuse with. Now then, its balance and weight are actually pretty damn phenomenal. As you can see, I really have no issue moving this sword around. And I say sword lightly because this is actually, I would believe, if I had an actual, like, gladius to compare it to, I want to say that this would be about half the weight of a real traditional gladius. This feels to be about maybe half a pound. Real historical gladius could range from one pound to about 2 pounds, depending on thickness, the amount of materials used, length, etc. And that's as far as I'm aware. If you have more accurate measurements, leave them in the comments below. I am always open to being corrected. Now, in any case, as an actual weapon, as an actual sword, this checks all the boxes for a short sword if you're wanting to get into practicing with a short sword. This is historically, as far as I'm aware, historically accurate in terms of the length of the overall sword, the blade length and grip length. Now, this does have something that traditional gladius don't have, and that is a flattened off guard and pommel section. Normally with gladius, they have a massive bulb at the bottom as the pommel and a massive bulb at the top as the handguard. I actually like the aesthetics of this flattened off version better. This is the kind of handle that I would elongate outwards to be a two-hander, and the blade to be lengthened to two hands as well, and comfortably use that. Like if someone wanted to make a hybrid between a gladius and a longsword. And we may see about that. I may get a hold of some of the custom sword makers on Instagram and see if that's possible. But in any case, well, I might just make it myself. Overall, what do I think of this gladius? Well, annoying my biases against 420 stainless steel and 440 stainless steel, there's nothing I can say that's negative about this. It cut well, it's light, nimble, and I haven't put it through any kind of traditional abusive machete-ish tests. At least I don't remember doing that. But I have I wouldn't say zero hesitation because of the steel, but I would be hesitant to really go for the full array of abusive tests that you can usually put a machete through, considering that this is a stainless steel and not a spring steel. The grip is comfortable. It has these indentions to increase the traction, and they also feel relatively nice in the hand. Like my fingers just naturally set into these. Now, this may be a holdover from the fact that I swing katanas 90%. 90% of my sword collection is katanas, and I swing a katana almost every day with the diamond wrapping. So I may have a bias of how good this feels because of that, because it feels very similar to how a katana handles, at least in my opinion. But to each their own when it comes to sword grip. There is one thing that I notice from wielding this thing, and that is these curved sections. As you're using this, will really rub on the flesh of your palm between your index and thumb. Not to mention the fact that this pommel is a similar situation to the Devil Edge Guama that I reviewed a while back, and that it digs into your wrist. Now in this instance, it doesn't do it as badly as the Guama, but if I'm performing a really dedicated cut in like hammer grip, the pommel will dig into my wrist ever so slightly. Now, you can mitigate this by using something like the handshake grip, for instance, where your wrist is put behind the pommel. Or you could try, well, this is handshake grip, this is saber grip. You could try cutting with saber grip. That works, but you can't generate as much power as with hammer and handshake grip. You have more control with the saber grip because your thumb is pressing against the back of the grip. But hammer grip and handshake grip are the ones that will really generate a lot of power. So it's worth mentioning that the pommel does slightly dig into your hand, at least with how it works with me. If you have larger or smaller hands, this may not be an issue. But overall, I don't really have any negative things to say about this gladius. It cuts well. It's cheap at around $40, which is your, as I said before, trying to get somebody into sword cutting, or you have a friend who's like, hey, I want to cut balls with you too, but I don't have like $100 to spend on a good budget, like beginner sword. What do I do? It's like, I got you, bro. A quick rundown to your local Academy Sports and Outdoors, which is where I bought this from. Maybe your local Rule King if they have any in stock. Or who knows, maybe your local Walmart has them as well. Those would be the three places off the top of my head where you'd most readily be able to pick this up. Academy is the way I got mine, my local Academy. So, for $40, you can get somebody into sword cutting and water bottle cutting and backyard cutting in general. And if they figure out that it's not for them, or they just want to do it when you are out and about cutting, or they just want to play around with the idea of starting a sword collection, this could be a perfect starting point for any of those. Like, hey bro, let's just head down to the local academy, we'll pick up a gladius machete, and you'll be able to start cutting today. Maybe pick up some Dasani, like a 24 pack of Dasani water bottles to cut if you don't have any plastic bottles on hand, or if you're like me, you either cut all your bottles or you're saving them up. But in any case, yeah, it's only one or the other with me. I either have all of them cut or I'm saving them, and then I get lazy and don't restock for like a month when people ask, well, why aren't you making cutting videos? Because I deal with my chronic laziness. And I know that's not an excuse, but still, unless you do backyard sword cutting and you do sword content on YouTube, y'all don't really understand the struggle of getting your targets, filling them, and the amount of time it takes to set everything up. Especially when you're doing everything the same day. You're filling your targets, you're setting up the camera, making sure it's close enough that you can get good shots without getting too close and it being completely soaked, unless you have a GoPro, which then it doesn't fucking matter. And then you do the actual cutting, you sign out of the video, and then you spend another hour cleaning up after the cutting. And you spent the first 3 hours of your morning setting everything up. Filling the targets, taking them outside, setting up the cutting stand, everything. There's a lot that goes into making even a 30-second cutting short, let alone full-on cutting videos like I tend to do. But in any case, enough of my woes and everything else. In conclusion, this, in my opinion, if you can overlook the steel, and I know I keep harping on that, it's a bad habit of mine, longtime viewers of my channel. I hope you have learned to ignore it. But in any case, if you can ignore the steel, this is a perfect entry-level sword for someone that's just wanting to take up backyard cutting as a hobby, maybe wants to start a sword collection of their own, or they just want to cut with you on the weekends because it's fun. And let's face it, cutting water bottles is fun, and we all have been there when we get that perfect cut. The bottle stays perfectly still. Whenever you do that for the first time, you get an ungodly amount of endorphins just flooding your brain of happy. I know that happened to me the first time I did it. I think it was when I was I think it was with a Bowie knife I did that. It was my first time having a static bottle. But in any case, and even to this day, that endorphin rush still kicks in whenever I manage to do it. But in any case, I find that this would be a perfect entry-level sword for someone, like I said, wanting to start a collection, wanting to get into backyard cutting themselves, or just wants to cut with you on the weekends. Or, if you want, you could blunt the edges entirely, maybe round off this tip, and use this for cosplay. Like, you're going as a commando, or take brown paint and a couple of markers and make this look wood, like give the grip a wooden look. And you could use this as like Roman cosplay. Or like if you want to do some sort of like modern Roman soldier, like you're dressed all in like modern military gear with Rome's insignias and everything, and you have this on your belt. You know, if the Roman Empire existed until today, I pretty much think this is what their gladiuses would, this is what their standard issue gladiuses would look like. Yeah. I personally believe that is a perfect entry-level sword, especially if you're looking for something cheap, inexpensive. You're not going to be completely heartbroken or out a shit ton of money if you damage it, break it, or chip it. So those are my thoughts on the Gladius. And real quick, before I wrap up, I'm going to do the sheath part because I've been talking nonstop about the sword. There's not much to write home about the sheath. It's just standard nylon sheath that a lot of these tactical blades come with. I do like that they have a reinforcement down here, a plastic reinforcement near the tip. They also have liners inside the sheath that help the blade slide in and out without cutting through it. The bolts seem to be, or these rivets seem to be of decent quality. Also, the stitch work along the sheath also seems to be of fine quality as well. From what I can gather, SOG gives you a lot of good quality for the money that you spend. And perhaps the reason they used 420 in this blade was a cost-saving measure. Because if they use 5160, which is a higher grade steel, that could immediately up the cost, or any other kind of spring steel, from I shouldn't say measly $40, especially in this economy, but from $40 it could probably increase the price overall by another $20 to $30, making it $60 to $70 if they used a spring steel, or especially if they used some kind of carbon steel. The clasps up here work very well. I haven't had any trouble with it falling out on me. I will say that you have a very generous belt loop, but I'm not a fan of these fixed position belt loops, simply because I like to have my swords at an angle, because when you draw anything from your person, your body naturally likes to draw at an angle. The way your arm, elbow, and wrist all bend in unison naturally likes to facilitate angular drawing. On the opposite end of that spectrum, you basically have to twist your elbow, your shoulder, and your wrist all around, draw straight up, and then bring it forward. So not only does it actually slow you down by a fraction of a second to 2 seconds, but it's not as biomechanically natural to draw up and out. It's far more natural to draw out and up, if that makes sense. Overall, I very much like the overall design and aesthetic of this blade. As I said, the only thing I harp on and the only negative that I can really find is that it's 420 stainless steel, and that's a personal gripe of mine. Because as I said before, it's the same steel as in 88 cents kitchen knives. But I don't want this video to turn into a 30-minute ramble fest, so I'm going to leave it. So I know I have a bad habit of trying to end the videos early and then I think of something else, but I'm actually going to end this here with one little side note. I do like that they added a lanyard hole if you wanted to customize it with a lanyard of your choice. Or, even still, make the world's biggest fucking neck knife. And now that I say that out loud, I'm probably going to try to do that. But in any case, until next time, I know a band of outlaws. Outlaw Samurai tells all y'all be crazy rednecks. Be safe and use your weapons. I'm out. Peace.